But there are like just sunken cities around the Mediterranean. Extremely cool. Look at these images. It's just like a city in the water, right? Hmm. It's not really suitable for what I'm doing now because this is relatively shallow. If you look at aerial photos, in fact, you should go to Google Maps. So this whole area is actually quite shallow. It's not that deep. Like it was slightly above the water, and then the earthquake hit, and then it was slightly below the water. And that's just real unfortunate, right? And you can see the peninsula there. So that used to be land, and now it's just a shallow area under the water. Fascinating. Let's go to Google Maps. Let's take some aerial photos. What do we have? Yeah, look at that. Well, did that used to be connected? Maybe this whole thing used to be connected. And apparently the ruins are like somewhere there, somewhere like there. Can't see it in the photo. Oh wait, no, it's not there. It's just here. It's this stuff, isn't it? Okay, well that's not useful for me actually. Uh, Back to Minecraft. So there's underwater ruins sometimes, but it's not convincing for this to be an underwater ruin. Alright, let me think about that in my own time. Um, for now, let's think about putting a foundation underneath where I'm going to put the Tholos. So the big circle, everything under the big circle has to be filled. Mm, and the circle itself is stone brick, I think. Stone brick. I do have stone. So underneath, And then, how do I do this? Just thinking about it again. Sometimes you build on a peninsula for defensive reasons, right? Although it's easy to be besieged. But maybe, you know, back in the in earlier times, when there were not powerful navies. So we're thinking about like the Neolithic era from thousands of years ago. Like for defensive purposes, you might put your settlement on a peninsula. So you can like blockade yourself onto the peninsula if you're attacked. And if you have boats, and if things really go wrong, you can just get to your boats and leave. Assuming the enemy doesn't have boats, or they don't have enough boats to also blockade you from the coast. But as technology progressed, that became less good of an option. Right, like if your enemy also has warships, then you're stuck in the on the peninsula, which is kind of bad. But the thing with settlements is that, especially a settlement that's been occupied for a long time, when you first choose the site, you don't really know how things are going to develop, you know, in the next 2,000 years or so. And so what used to be a good site might eventually become a bad site. Which is, I guess, what happened. And also earthquakes, which submerged the city. Like, originally, it might not actually have been the whole city. Again, like, you know, maybe they thought, okay, we're gonna build our settlements on, like, the high ground at the end of the peninsula, right? And oh, well, that's a good place. But then as time passed, the population grew, and it grew and grew and grew, and they built further and further out onto the lower ground. And so again, that was not ideal in terms of the terrain, but you already have a settlement there, and what are you gonna do, right? You want to live nearby, but you don't want to, but you don't have enough land that is actually suitable, and so people start living on the less suitable land, further down, further closer to the water, more prone to flooding. And then eventually the earthquake hits and the whole thing sunk under the water. So, yeah, so like settlements, you make decisions early on, and maybe like 1,000 years later you start regretting those decisions you made 1,000 years ago. Alright, and then we have to fill underneath here. I wonder if I should just build the Tholos, or no. I guess yes. And also, should I raise the whole thing up by a block? I just realized that maybe I should raise the whole thing up by a block. Maybe I should raise the whole thing up by a block. Because I can just lower everything else by a block, that's also the same thing. If I lower this part by a block, maybe that's the better thing to do. Lower everything else. I need to make sure I have enough light out here still. I'm stuck. Alright, let me make sure I have enough light on the outside. That's not on the outside. And also in the Mediterranean, there has been deforestation. So again, it's possible that originally, when there were trees, the location was better. And then as the trees got chopped down over the centuries, things deteriorated, right? And like maybe erosion happened. Maybe like the food supply reduced, overfishing, deforestation, and other environmental damage made the location less than favorable after a while. Like if you read histories, you find that the Greeks, they built a lot of warships. Whereas you look at Greece today, and there's just not that many trees. Presumably there were more trees, and they used all their trees building warships or something. And so now there's not enough trees. Presumably there's been significant deforestation in Greece, in Italy, North Africa, like all around the Mediterranean, right? Like back in Roman times, North Africa was fertile. For a time, it was the breadbasket of Rome. They would like have their farms on the other side of the Mediterranean and just ship grain over to Rome to support the population of Rome. Whereas if you look at North Africa now, there's nowhere near as much agriculture there. Part of that has been climate change, not, not global warming kind of climate change, but more geologic. The Mediterranean has also gotten drier over the millennia. Part of that is natural, but part of that is also deforestation and environmental degradation, man-made. Alright, so we have foundations. And then we have to fill this in, right? Oh crap. Let's get some snow blocks over here. Uh. Submerged cities, stone architecture. The Greek architecture also. They're based on wooden buildings, like all the ornamentation that you find in Greek architecture. They're like stone representations of timber buildings. So they used to build in stone. They used to build in timber. My snow isn't here. And then eventually they transitioned to stone buildings a lot. I guess they still use timber sometimes. But again, what I'm trying to say is there used to be a lot more trees. What would the ground be? Stone? I guess just plain stone. What would the ground be under the Tholos? Let me look at my the Tholos of Delphi. Grass and dirt. And then like stone paving. I guess stone bricks will be the closest thing to the stone paving, but I don't want it to be too gray. I did bring like different colors of stone, right? So all this stuff, I did bring different colors, and I want to use different colors. But I do need to think about how to use the colors.